Okay, so just wanted to welcome everybody to the third workshop of the Get Good with Articulate Storyline. I'm Tom Velasquez, the current technology director for ATD San Diego. I am joined by John Morley. He is a former instructional designer with Genetech, currently freelancing, and he's currently looking for freelancing work. So please hit him up if you are interested. I'm also joined by our co-presenter, Jaqueline Silva. She is a positive, versatile professional with 29 plus years experience with a primary emphasis on learning solution architecture and implementation. She currently works for General Atomics, and we're glad for her to be here this evening. I also want to encourage everybody to continue to check out our events calendar. We also have the final Get Good with Storyline workshop in November, plus we have our in-person professional mixer that's going to be held in UTC. So go ahead and make sure you attend that if you can. So without further ado, I'll hand this over to John. John, please take it away.
Okay, thank you, Tom. I'm going to share my screen here, get started. Let's see. Everybody should be seeing layers now. My splash screen. Now, what I've heard from some of you is that we need to take this up a level in terms of assumed experience. In short, less on the basics of what the features are and more on how to get more out of those features. But if you're new to Storyline, you're still in the right place. This is an opportunity to see what it can do and to ask the people who actually developed it, how'd you do that? Also, as we started last month with John Luttrell, we will have a guest presenter most months. And as Tom mentioned, we are very fortunate this month to have Jaqueline Silva with us, who will be taking over the second half of this workshop to show a very slick job aid. Other months are open, so please volunteer. I'm putting my shiny new Post and Intech email address in the chat window. Let me do that. I should have done that earlier. Well, I'll do that toward the end. Please contact me to volunteer, and don't think we only want to see things with Disney-esque production values and stunning creativity. This workshop is to discover how Storyline is really being used out there, full spectrum. So it's your opportunity to get some knowledgeable feedback on your work. One of my frustrations at Genentech was the lack of critique, although it was flattering that no one presumed to question my work other than factual accuracy. That's not how you get better. And that was part of the motivation behind me starting this workshop, so I could talk with other people who know Storyline and know instructional design about how to get better. In that spirit, let me show something we didn't have time for last month that relates to this month's topic of triggers and responds to a question we had in an earlier month about avatars. So let's click next here. This is the front end for a quiz, as it says in big letters there, quiz with a speedway metaphor. As the learner answers questions, every correct answer, they get to take a lap. And if they have an incorrect answer, you'll see what happens. The first thing the learner has to do is select what they want to take around the speedway. I'll select a bicycle here. And for demonstration, I've stripped out the actual questions and just have a button here for what would happen if the answer was correct and what would happen if it's wrong. So let's click right answer, and we'll see that our avatar zips around the speedway. And then gets the checkered flag, of course. If the answer is wrong, well, let's see, there we go. Now something else pops up there to indicate a crash. So let's see what that is all about here. Here is our splash screen. This is how we choose the avatar. And this is, you can see here, this image, we have two objects, a crash vehicle and a good vehicle. I'm clicking on the crash vehicle here, and you can see if I go up to animations that this has a path that goes off the screen. If I click a different object, this is the good vehicle, and it goes all the way around. So that's just one of the motion paths here that has been straightened out. And the layers are triggered by a variable over here. Answer right. So that is set by the question, whether the layer, the correct layer or the incorrect layer comes up. By default, the animation of a complete lap or crash is triggered automatically, so no trigger is needed. But we then need a trigger to show the appropriate win or crash. So let's go over here to the triggers. Start with a crash vehicle, and I'll double click that so we can see what happens. So this trigger shows us we have to show the layer named crash. Let me show those layers here. This is the win layer, and then this is the crash layer here. Go back to the base layer, and we'll take a look at this trigger, and we'll see that we show the layer crash when the animation completes on the crash vehicle. So of course we have to duplicate that for the good vehicle as well. So let me double click that, and you see this is freeform motion path 2 once this animation completes. Use of the states, we had a question earlier about avatars. How do we change avatars here? And it took me a little while to figure this out, but it can be done with states here. If you click on the clown car here, you see that we have a variable here called vehicle, and that's a text vehicle, so you can put anything in there you want, motorcycle, truck, whatever. And then the different states here determine what is seen. Let me get to the crash vehicle. That shows it a little more clearly.
Nice.
Yeah, there's the truck, the motorcycle, the bicycle, the red car. And then here in the triggers for the baseline, you'll see that we have, it has to go through all 5 triggers just to start with, change the state of either good vehicle or crash vehicle to whatever is in the variable, in this case, a bicycle, when the timeline starts. So if the variable vehicle is bicycle, change the state to bicycle. And as you can see, there are 5 different things here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And this has to be, it gets a little time intensive in that I had to do this for both the good vehicle and the crash vehicle. So that is a example of how to get the, whoops, there we go. How to change your avatar. What happened to my guy? There we go. There are the states. Any questions about how to do that with the states or anything else?
I asked the question in the chat, John. I was curious how you drew the path. Was that with your mouse, or did you use a stylus for that?
With the mouse, go
Okay.
up to, let's see, select the guy and then go up to add a motion path, and this is the free form. So once you click free form, you just go all around here.
Oh, okay.
I'll do that. Let's see. Whoops. Nope, that's not what I want to do. But anyway, that is how it's done there. So this is an example of how layers are used to automatically trigger an animation after an animation with its own timelines, so they can be stacked to create a smooth sequence.
John, I have a question. So the backdrop, you have like a car racing track. Could you literally use any type of PNG or JPEG as a backdrop to change the course or theme of
Oh,
this?
sure. Sure. That's just a regular old, let's see, what is that called? That is a image that I found off the internet. So that you can put anything in there you want. You can have boat races, horse races, foot races. You can put the Tour de France in there if you care to.
Great, thanks.
Okay, moving along here. This is going along with this month's topic of layers. Let me admit to one of my own ignorances as I was trying to work on this. This is another quiz, another front end for a quiz. Let's see, why aren't I going? Let's click there. Speedway, virus cartoon. Here we go. This is the front end for a quiz using a virus metaphor. Very timely here. The way this works is we're telling the learner, we're asking the learner to kill this virus. And you kill the virus by plucking out the coronas. And every time you answer a question correctly, one of the coronas goes away. So let's take a look. This, of course, can be scaled up or down by adding or subtracting coronas. For this demonstration, I have only 3 of the coronas with the little stars that are loaded and ready to go. So let's take a look. We'll click this one. We'll answer this one correctly, and we'll see that the corona bounces off the screen, and you see the virus say, ouch. We will answer this one incorrectly, and we'll see what happens there. Continue. Now the virus taunts the learner a little bit and says, I'm still here. And using states again, the corona changes color to let the learner know that this is different from all the rest. You've already tried this once. So let's go on to the third one here. And you'll see what I often do with the quizzes is set up 3, basically template questions, so I can just reuse them over and over again rather than formatting them over and over. So let's submit. And we see another corona goes away, leaving one final corona. We'll click that, get it right this time, and we will see that because there were only the 3 there, that we just killed the virus, and you get congratulated for having passed the quiz. So let's take a look at how that works. Speedway, where's the virus? Here we go. Now, the question I had, what caused me pain was, you can see in the layers here, each layer is, each corona has its own layer. And then this gets labor intensive, and that the layer needs to have, it needs to be represented by two different objects, the static corona on the base layer plus the, you see over here, each corona has its own layer to see it zipping off the screen. And then at the same time you're seeing the zipping corona, you also see the ouch. The ouch should come up as the zipping happens. Couldn't get that to happen. I could get one, but not the other. Can either of you suggest what my problem was, what I was not doing correctly? What happens when only one single layer comes up and will not let you?
Did you have a So are you saying that the ouch just doesn't leave the screen?
No, the ouch doesn't come up. I could,
Oh, it doesn't come up.
I would see either the ouch or uh, the, the layer that showed it zipping off. So I've opened the dialog box here to give you maybe a hint.
Oh,
What
you have
what
two
did-
separate layers?
what did I do wrong? Yes, they're definitely two separate layers. And this is how it's currently configured. What would have caused me to have the problem of only one showing at a time?
Yeah, you, um,
How about this one right up here?
Yeah, hide other slide layers.
That-
you,
yeah, go
did you
ahead.
have that checked?
Yeah.
Okay. I was like, it's unchecked. There's nothing wrong.
Yeah, no, it was. I think that's by default, but anyways, somehow that
Yes.
was checked for all of them, and it drove me crazy for a while. But that is all I had to do. Just like get the whole system. All you have to do is know how to click. You know how to click, don't you? Click and drag. Now, this I had another question about this at the bottom where it says revisits. When revisiting, if I'm doing um, review questions, I always reset to the initial state, but left this automatically decide. Why would you want to use resume save state?
Well, for
Did you ever use
example,
that?
yeah, if, for example, you had something on the screen that you didn't want the user to have to re-see, maybe it was something to block something on the base layer, a dialog box or something. Maybe it was, maybe something that had run its course, an animation that ran off the screen. If you wanted that to show again, then you would resume the save state. But if you didn't want that to show again, then you would just you would have the initial state. If you
Right.
wanted for that not to show, part of the layer to have completed, then yeah, you would want to save that state or save the, you would want to save it.
Yeah, resume the save
Resume
state.
it.
So the automatically decide. I can understand where that's the right choice if you're doing a quiz, because the quiz wants to remember what was done, and then if the learner selects to go back and review the quiz, well, you don't want to have the questions unanswered. You want to see exactly what what the learner responded and what the correct answer is.
Right. If the learner wanted to see a particular layer again, say they were clicking a button to see a layer and
Right.
you had resume the save state, it wouldn't replay that layer. Say you had some audio on it. It would not then replay it. If you wanted them to replay it, then you would not resume the save state.
Right, right. Okay. That makes good sense. All righty here. So I'll close this without doing anything else. The other thing going on is that because the coronas may or may not be plucked out after they're clicked. Let me get back to the base layer here. We need to keep track of what has been clicked and what hasn't clicked, because you don't want the corona to come back after it's already been plucked any more than you want it to not be there if the answer is incorrect. So there are a couple things going on here. The layer with a zippy corona fires only when two, let me see, I have to go there and then find a Corona 1 show. So here, when we show the layer here that shows it zipping, when the timeline starts on this slide, that happens only if Corona 1, each of the static coronas has a variable attached to it. Well, I can't, yeah, let me just show that. You'll see this is kind of the time intensive thing. We have a Corona 1, Corona 2, Corona 3, plus we also have a Corona 1 is still there. So this allows a pretty good control of showing the zippy layer. The Corona 1 variable has to be false. This is answering the question, should the static layer be there? If the answer is, if the question is answered correctly, well, no, false, it shouldn't be there. And is the Corona 1 still there? The value is true. And then once the, let's see, once the layer is triggered, whoops, close that. The trigger Corona layer, the Corona sets the variable to false. So it can only be triggered once.
Storyline is so versatile. There's so many ways to do things. I bet you could even do it with a state. You could hide the Corona once the answer had become true. You could just say, put the Corona, you could set the Corona to state hidden.
Yeah, states, and it's something that took me a long time to realize with the states is that you can tell it to the initial state can be hidden rather than, or it can be any one of those four things, hover, mist, but hidden. That's saved me some aggravation. The zippy at the end of the thing here, let me just show you that for the virus must die. Here we go. This is the trigger for the virus dying. And we wait for the timeline to reach 2.75 seconds. So that gives the zippy Corona enough time to go off. And then down here, for each and every question, we need a variable. You see a Corona 1, they all have to equal false, and then if they're all false, then this layer will fire to see the animation. See, it's he spins and shrinks to go off the screen, and you may remember what that. Oh, okay. The recording just started and stopped. All right, let me stop sharing. And Jacqueline, if you would be so kind as to illuminate us further on your use of Storyline.
All right, so I will share my first artifact, which is somebody who sent me a 14-page document and asked me to create training. And this training was to be about how to decide if you need a new part number when a part changes. And that turns out to be quite complicated. There are a lot of things to consider. So this gentleman from the configuration management team came to me and said, look, people aren't doing this right. We need to train all the engineers. And I looked at this and this 14 pages, and I thought to myself, okay, This is one of those times when, we're going to try and dip people in training, and then 2 days later or 2 months later, when they actually have to make this decision, they're going to remember nothing, right? But when I looked at this document, it actually boiled down to a process flow chart. A process flow chart. So we'll go to page 6 here. There we go. Well, it's supposed to go to page 6.
Are you holding control?
There we go.
Yeah, there we
So
go.
yeah, so there it is. This is this decision, this flow chart.
My
And I
goodness.
thought to myself, why don't we just create a job aid? Never mind trying to make everybody read all of this and follow these arrows and try and figure out what the heck. And by the way, if I wasn't sure about what a interchangeable, what that meant, what the heck? So instead of doing that, what I did was to create what I then called a decision tree. It was basically a flow chart where we asked a bunch of questions and then came up with an answer based on the answers to the questions. We don't have to do rocket science with this stuff. We just have to pick the right approach. So what I did was to create this, and let me now share the storyline file that I created. So here we have a really basic storyline file. We start with this screen that asks, that asks them, do you need a new part number? Well, if you need more information about how to use it, go ahead and click this button, which will open a lightbox slide, and click here to begin. So you can see this is a series of branching. If we go to the story view, you can just see that I set up a slide for every question. And then based on their answer, yes, no, it would go to another slide. And I just made sure that the branching followed the flow chart. That was all that I needed to do. No layers, nothing tricky at all, just a concept. Once published, I gave my configuration management team member a link, which he put on his website, so that people could go to his website, click the link, answer the questions, and have their answer without us having to train 3,000 engineers who would then remember none of it, right? This is a just-in-time job aid. So here's what it ended up looking like. Are you seeing this?
No, we're seeing you.
One more time. Let me try this one more time. That's what I meant to do. There we go.
There we go.
So now we have a decision tree. And if we click decision tree use, here's my lightbox slide, which talks about what this is. There's a case study that you can link to that's out on the internet. But I click here to begin. And let's just ask the questions. Is this part interchangeable? Well, it is, or it isn't, or I don't know. What do I need to know to decide if it's interchangeable? All right, we go to our secondary flow chart and we ask, does the appearance of both items meet all aesthetic requirements? And we'll just say, okay, yeah, it does. Now, if I'd answered no, we would know that in the background, we would branch to, okay, this part isn't interchangeable. All three of the questions in this interchangeable branch have to be yes in order for it to be interchangeable. So we asked for form, fit, and function. In this case, I'm just going to say no. So we find out that, well, it's not interchangeable. Let's go on. Has it already been made? Well, let's say it has not been made. Now you guys are going to help me with the rest of the questions. Is traceability required?
Yes.
Yes, it's required. Okay, then can we do it?
Mhm.
Is it possible without changing the part number?
No,
No.
I
No.
would say no.
Okay. Now, in the flow chart, there were actually 12 questions, but because we could branch using this tool, I didn't have to look through all 12 questions of this flow chart. I could just get there a lot faster. So now I know that I got to assign a new part number. Now, how did we do that in the storyline folder or in the story? And the other thing I wanted, this is a really old module. I think I created this back in 2017. And I'm going to start over just for fun. But notice that I don't have any next buttons. I'm controlling it all with buttons on the screen. So these are all done. This is with a trigger I got. Yes is a trigger that will branch me to the next interchangeability question. No will get me out of the interchangeability loop and take me to the next series of questions, right? So these are just buttons I created to go back to the last slide. It's really simple stuff. And by the way, I snuck a little number in the corner here so that I could keep track of this myself. My subject matter expert could keep track of this themselves. Nobody's noticing this number in the question in the corner here. But as my subject matter expert is reviewing this, they can check it against their flow chart and see, make sure I'm doing the right kind of branching.
Yeah, slide
So
numbers are good.
slide numbers are good. So, you know, a little something, you know, these slides are not going in order necessarily, but the steps,
Oh yeah.
we're helping everybody keep track of the steps. So let me go back to my storyline slide now.
Okay. And why the wood metaphor? This wooden look doesn't say high-tech aerospace to me.
No, my thinking on this was simply we're solving a puzzle. You know,
Oh,
this is
okay.
a part. And I wanted something simple and something simple that wasn't too cutesy.
Mhm.
So I just settled on this.
Yeah, it could be a real relief to see something actually organic after dealing with high-tech things all day.
That's right. The other thing I wanted to show was the player and what I did with the player to make it simple. I'm not sure you can see my player screen. Can you?
There it is. Okay, we see it
Okay.
now.
Yeah. So this is really simple. I have nothing.
You just turn it
The
all
whole
off.
idea is a completely plain player. And the idea being this way, the slide itself takes up as much of the screen as possible. I didn't need to give it a title. I didn't need to give it a menu. I didn't need to give it forward and backward buttons. And if I select absolutely nothing on the player, then I just get a frame and nothing else. So again, if I'm just going to launch this particular slide so you can see what I'm talking about here. You know, where you would normally see a title up here. Nope. There are no player buttons down here. There's no seek bar. None of that is needed, right? So
Is
I
that a
might as well
border?
use the screen. Pardon?
That brown border, is that put in by the player or is that something that's on the slide itself?
Yes, the player, I selected a brown player.
Okay.
And this is all I get is this border.
Mhm.
Yep.
Yeah, that looks very nice.
So it's a really simple concept. And again, if you go to the story view, you can see simple branching. Not even any layers needed, but let's just for fun go to one of the slides so we can check out the what we're doing here in the triggers. Again, very simple. You got a back arrow, that's this right here, right? And here's your trigger, send them back to the last slide. Here's your yes trigger. And it's the yes and no triggers where I told them if it's yes, this is where we go for the next question. If it's no, we're going to go somewhere else.
You say simple, but it looks as if all that branching would be really tricky to keep straight, because you have to, you're dealing with several variables there in terms of what happens when. How many revisions, or did you do this on paper first? You showed us the process flow. And
Yeah.
Was it fairly easy going from the process flow to this, or was it a lot of back and forth?
Well, as it turns out, I numbered the questions. I numbered the questions, and then I made the slides have the same number as these questions. So let me one more time share my flow chart. So here we have all of these numbers, right? 4, 3, and we see, okay, if my answer is no on number 3, I skip over here to number 6. If it's yes, then I just skip to number 4. So having numbered my slides, and by the way, I did that in Storyline too. Let's look again at my Storyline slide. Actually, oh wait, I shared the actual one more time. Let me try that. We want the Storyline folder.
Yeah, let's take
so we look
the
here,
storyline.
and I simply made my questions match what the flow chart was doing. So if I went out here, I just had to do the branching carefully, but having already created numbered steps, it made it simpler. And notice here, I named my slides with the number of the step. So never mind what the number of the slide was, right? Number 4 was rework, right? So number 3 was ordered. So I had all of these steps numbered, which made it easy at that point to do the right branching.
This could have relevance. The project I'm working on right now is for investment counselors who have to keep up with a whole lot of government regulations, and it's very difficult to know if this, can you do that or the other, or 3 other things. So
yeah, you can do this with basically any flow chart.
But my question is, can we take this and turn it into an app on a phone? Because to use this, somebody has to have access to the computer. And
well, we can certainly
always...
You could, if you have a phone, you can access a website and then the link from the website.
Right.
So you can do so many creative things.
There's a variation.
Storyline.
There's a variation of this. Sorry, I don't mean to interrupt, but to go on with John was saying, I saw a version of that on a dating app where it's asked you, are you single? Are you male or female? And then you kind of go through the trees like that. In the same way you do this, but this is great. I think this is really great, simple. It's there's the beauty and the simplicity of this, and I'm sure it's really accessible. So the engineers go back and they can go through the whole process and understand. All right, and so that's great.
Yeah. Anytime they need to figure this out, again, they don't have to remember, they don't have to, review the flow chart. They just answer a few questions and it gets them there. In any way. I mean, at most they're asking, 8 questions, and at least maybe it's just 3 questions. So it makes it very efficient for them. I've also used the same concept to collect information. So I'll, this is a little more complicated, but I'll ask a series of questions, and depending on the answers, they go to different, they branch differently, but I collect the information in variables, and then I present those variables in an email, which then gets sent to the relevant group for who needs this information. So there are all kinds of interesting job aids that you can create with Storyline.
Is there any other way to get a variable out of Storyline?
I have not I've only done a little research, and it was a few years ago, to figure out how to send a variable to an LMS, and I was not successful because the triggers on the LMS end were not there. But I do know, you can certainly send them to a JavaScript, wherever a JavaScript, whatever you can do in a JavaScript, you can use that and send it anywhere where a JavaScript can send it. Okay, in my case, I selected to send via email.
Right. Yeah, that sounds good.
That's a little more complicated, but I didn't know. I'm not a big JavaScript girl, but I went to the heroes section of Articulate, and there was somebody that had the instructions on how to send variables in an email, and I borrowed that and made it work.
We all know how to copy and paste, don't we?
We steal with pride. Appropriate. Yeah. We appropriate.
Yeah.
And people share this. We like helping each other, it seems.
Yeah, so. Well, that's the motivation behind putting this thing together. And another motivation kind of goes back to what you were saying earlier. In our profession at large, there seems to be a lot of conversation around, well, that's not really training. That could be a job aid, or that could be a re-engineering. But because of that focus, it seems as if, well, sometimes it is a training issue. Sometimes you do need training. And yes. I don't see a lot of that. That was one of the motivations behind starting this workshop, that I don't see a lot. I see more emphasis on it not convincing your client that it's not a training issue, than focus on doing good training once it is decided that it's a training issue. And yes, you need training.
Yeah. Yes. You really do need to establish yourself as a consultant and gain credibility with your clients or your I think of my coworkers as my customers. Right. Because when I came back to my buddy Jim and I said, look, Jim, what about this? Mm-hmm. He loved it. He loved it.
That's great.
Because he agreed with me. Who was going to remember 2 months later, or 2 days later, 2 minutes later? And this was a solution that fit.
Yeah, it's nice to be appreciated.
Yes. Yeah.
I really like.
That's what I had to share with you today.
I was both the presentations were great. There's kind of an element of getting people really engaged, and it seems like both of the presentation shows like training as kind of what I guess gamifying things now. And I think from what I went to a long time ago, I went to this conference on gamification, and it's about gamifying everything. How can you, and if you turn it into a game, even like training, it gets people really involved and engaged. So the question I want to ask you is then, is there any way that you can use Articulate Storyline and interface it with the LMS to make a game of like a competition amongst people and have a healthy competition to see who scores better? Because there was someone I know who works at Roche. He does marketing, and he heads it from all these different countries, and he wanted to get them all these different areas in different countries where they're selling these kind of medications and they're doing these training. they want to get all engaged, so they made them into World Cup. And so,
Mhm.
so like the Middle East offices would have, they would watch the scoreboard and get really engaged, and they'd see what their scores are per team. And then the European office would then see the scoreboard, and then the North American office, and it'd be like it was a gamifying something like the training side of this. Is there any way that you can, I imagine the LMS is something that you use to keep track of that, or I don't know.
Well,
It
I
really
know
depends on the hooks in your LMS and
Uh,
what modules you buy with it.
Jacqueline, have you ever used the survey aspect of the quiz? I've always just used the quiz, but I know it has a survey, and
Mhm.
the survey would, and the whole purpose of a survey is to compare how people are thinking or doing, and that's kind of like the leaderboard that Ben was talking about. I
Yeah, I mean, you can get some analytics from the surveys. Um,
Have you
our
used that in the
LMS
past?
doesn't present those analytics very well, so we do surveys through a different tool. But um, I have used the survey tool. Interestingly, another concept is I have used the survey tool when I wanted to present two different sets of questions based on a user role, and I had to have two result slides, and I used the survey to point to which result slide would get sent to the LMS. It was tricky. That's the only thing I've ever used a survey question for in Storyline.
Yeah, how would you do that? Uh,
It's tricky. I can't explain that in 5 minutes. It would have to be a whole show and tell.
yeah, that's
Well,
really under
that's
the
a tricky
hood.
one.
I really like the quiz functionality that's built into Storyline because it
Mhm.
tends to do things, a lot of things just automatically.
Mhm.
I've also found that when you start to get in and try to change things in the feedback masters, that doesn't work. That has been just I would like to do uh,
Hmm.
a workshop on that at some point, because I go in and I change the objects, you change the colors, and what actually comes out looks nothing. That the colors are completely different from what the master is indicating that it should be.
Hmm.
And there are a number of fluky things. I don't even know where to start. I think I've started several threads myself on the e-learning heroes about one thing or another, and those threads have gotten very long because there are a lot of
Hmm.
people out there having the same experiences that I've been having, and they aren't necessarily positive.
Hmm. Well, maybe you could bring that to one of your sessions and maybe put out a challenge
Yeah, yeah.
and see who can solve some of these problems.
Well, I think their developers should be the people solving it. So maybe we can get some suggestions to them. But in terms of suggestions, Min and Jacqueline, what should we be doing with this going forward? We have one more scheduled, and then we're going to be off for December. Is this format working well, or as we were just discussing, we can do an entire hour on the flukes and problems with quizzes? Do you
You
have any
know,
suggestions?
my suggestion would be maybe to do a session on layouts and things like how to select your colors for a layout, or what kinds of things can go on a layout. Can you use layers in a layout? Can will your buttons be active if you use a layout? There's certain little quirks to layouts that can be helpful or maybe not so helpful.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
That sounds as if it would relate to the master slides
Yes, that's
more.
what I'm getting at.
Right, right.
Your
In
master
fact,
slide layouts.
Yeah, that's the first thing that I addressed with this series last
That's
year. Storyline in less time. I was
Mm.
emphasizing that, well, you can fire it up and just start to format every slide, but that
Mm.
takes a lot of time. If you format a master slide once, well, all of your slides fall. And there's
Yeah.
one little thing you want to change it once on the master slide, and dozens, hundreds of slides all look the way you want it to look now. Well, we are tentatively scheduled next month for November to talk about the player. So
Oh, okay.
this kind of fits into that, because the player has its own color theme and all
Mhm.
kinds of things. So let's go with that, and I'll try
That's a
to
great idea.
find another. Jacqueline, I really appreciate you being our guest presenter. That was very informative, and I'll try to find somebody else. Anybody watching this recording, please volunteer so we can help you with what you're doing, and you can help us learn a little bit more about Storyline.
All right.
Okay.
Thanks so much, John. Thanks everyone. Thanks for having me.
I thought
You're
your
welcome.
I thought your flow chart was really great, Jacqueline. That was really interesting.
Thanks.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Okay, a few minutes short here, but one thing I've noticed about training and education is nobody complains when the meeting ends earlier. So
Awesome.
we'll give everybody back 5 minutes then. Yeah,
Excellent.
Tom, thank you for your help with this.
Don't go anywhere quite yet. Just
Okay.
I'm gonna go ahead and stop the recording now. But thanks everybody for joining us, and we'll see you next time.